Welcome all to my paranormal closet where the stories and magic take place. Today's guest has been interested in the paranormal and the strange ever since her first experience at a very young age. She enjoys spending time spirit box investigating and journaling her family's paranormal encounters during their time in Puerto Rico. When not writing about her experiences, she spends time with her partner and cat in the Pacific Northwest. And today, she's going to share some of those stories with us. Join me in welcoming Lumi Rivera to the show. Welcome.
Hi, Eleanor. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm nervous, but excited.
No reason to be nervous. We're just having a friendly conversation.
hmm
You mentioned you write about your experiences. So, do you do it just for pleasure, like in journaling, or are you putting together a book to publish?
I have seriously been considering a book recently just because there's so much that I've experienced with just by myself and with friends and family members. Right now, it is all just kind of in a journal that I keep right next to me in my desk. Just like
That's a
if
good way to
something
do it.
happens, yeah, if
Sure.
something
Well,
happens, I'm like,
I don't even know if you know it, but I've published 6 books. So you are welcome to reach out to me with any questions or advice or help. And once you do get that book published, you'll have to come back on the show. You have to promise me that.
absolutely, I'll
Cool.
come back.
What was your first experience that you had at a very young age?
Good. Like my very first one was with a doll, and I know that's like really common, but my abuela, my grandmother, she had a ton of dolls. She was big on doll collecting, and you know, I'm terrified of dolls these days, but I understand it. And just got done playing with my little sister, and the doll in our room just like kind of looked over because it fell over, and I was like, huh, that's weird, and it blinked. It was one of those dolls that you had to set it back and then bring it up again to blink, and that spooked me. It also spooked my sister, and we
You
went.
almost feel like maybe we imagined something, maybe it's really nothing, but it was
Yeah,
maybe the start of something and you didn't realize it, but you kind of sensed something sort of thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. We
definitely.
actually ended up running to our mom, like, Mom, why did grandma's dolls start blinking? And she just thought we were playing with them, and no, we were playing, but not with dolls. So that was definitely a start. And
First
after we
experience
moved,
was only the beginning, correct?
yes, only the beginning. And
Tell me about your parents and where they're from, any and how that because you said that that plays a huge part in your history and what you experienced, what they
um
experienced even.
yeah, we are all from Puerto Rico. My mom is from Canovanas, and my dad is from Loiza, and two very different areas on the island. They're kind of close. They're both, um, I would say, not well funded places, and that's was much worse back in the 70s and 60s.
Poor
So
community.
yeah, very poor community. Um, Everyone did know each other. Um, we just all kind of like talk to each other because we didn't have anything else. And where my dad is from, they didn't have like a road and like an actual road to it until the 80s. So it was insane because it was so insular. Nobody could really talk to one another outside of that.
Interesting. And any run-ins with chupacabra? Because you did mention that chupacabra was prevalent in that area.
Allegedly, my
Okay.
my dad's cousin was one of the first witnesses. I say allegedly because he told me this story all the time, and I was like, I don't believe you. Like, I just don't, because it's such an easy thing to be like, oh yeah, we're related to that person. And then when my grandmother, his mom, came to the US after Hurricane Maria, I jokingly asked because I was like, oh yeah, dad said that, we're related to this person." And she's like, "No, yeah, we are." And I was like, "Oh, oh, I thought you were lying all these years." Because dads like to tell stories. How was I supposed to know that it was like actually legit? Um, I did talk to my mother about it too, and she was like, "Yeah, like I don't like your dad, but yes, that was a thing." And I was like, "Okay, confirmation, cool." I don't really like talking about it these days more because the shift on the focus of El Chupacabra is now down more in Texas and the southern states and, in Mexico and stuff. And it's kind of awkward hearing about a family member being like, "Oh, they're probably crazy. They didn't know what they were seeing." And that kind of hurts.
Sure. Well, being a paranormal instrument is the same. You still you deal with people saying the same thing to you, but because we have been so open about it amongst other people too, probably the last 10 years have opened that world up to everybody that we're not really considered crazy. Still, people out there that call us crazy, but
Sure.
there's more of us that are outnumbering those people that call us crazy.
Yeah,
So.
which I'm thankful for because I realize like a lot of the stuff that people experience and even I've experienced, like I would easily be called crazy. But I also have experienced things when other people were around and those people were not related to me. So it's not like yeah, please don't call me delusional because it's not like what is it, folia do? Something like that.
This whole
Um
thing is a gift and a curse all at the same time.
yeah, that is for sure.
Well, do you mind telling us the Chupacabra story?
I don't know much about it
Mhm.
just because what I remember was like um back when my family would watch like Univision to get news on from the island and stuff like that. Um and there was like this drawing that was like green and had huge red eyes, and I was looking at that and I'm like, "Ah, that's kind of," and the spikes in the
Creepy.
back. It was the like an older depiction. It was colored green with like reddish eyes and then
Mhm.
spikes coming out of the back. And I remembered being terrified, and my dad was like muttering under his breath, like, "Well, yeah, of course she saw that." And like, what? What are you talking about? And he wouldn't really tell me anything until after like a one of those documentaries about cryptids came out in
Mhm.
the like I want to say it was 2000s, which a hot minute ago, but one of those documentaries where they interview various people, and I believe it was one of the ones where the lovely woman down in Texas was talking about her experiences and having like caught it and gotten it stuffed. And then my dad was talking to me about how like wild it is that it's crossed over so much. And then this woman comes on to be interviewed, and obviously there's voiceover of her talking in English because she only speaks Spanish. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's my cousin." And I'm like,
The woman on the TV?
"Yeah." And I was just like,
Oh, are you for real?
yeah." I didn't believe him even though he's like, "No, you can ask your mom. Like she is my cousin. She babysat you." And I was like, "I still don't believe you, but okay." Now, I don't remember her babysitting me because that was like when I was baby,
Really
so
done, yeah,
long time
yeah.
ago. But it just became this like little bit of family lore. Like this happened. Enjoy.
There's a story of your mom and a lady in the tree.
So there's a lot of history on the island, a lot of death, a lot of mistreatment from the Spanish to the indigenous population. Um, my mom was probably around 7 years old, and her brother, which is the youngest in the child, was around 5. And they had been playing outside because there wasn't much else for them to do, and there was a lady talking to them from the tree, and she was in a white dress, very beautiful, and my mom explicitly stated, like, she looked so sad and hurt, and she asked to play with us, and if we were like, "Yeah, of course. Let me go ask my mom to make sure I can actually play with you." Because stranger danger still exists.
Yeah,
And
nowhere, no matter where you are, right?
yeah, exactly. And my grandmother was like, looked over at the tree and was like, "No, you cannot talk to her. Leave her alone. Don't." And my mom would not take no for an answer. And my grandmother was like, "She's dead. Leave her alone. Let her rest." And she was like, she's dead?" And I was like, "Yeah, she's leave her alone, just." And then she started praying, and I was like, "Okay, thanks, mom.
So,
Thanks
but
for
yeah,
that."
back then it was kind of ignore them, don't acknowledge them kind of thing.
Yeah, and I always felt bad about that because it's not like they have anyone who can listen.
Yep.
Not not everyone in my mom's family was of the opinion that you should ignore. There were people who were like, "Yeah, acknowledge them." But
Yeah, the importance of the acknowledgement and interaction results in a peaceful environment most of the time. Spirit oftentimes becomes mischievous when they aren't being acknowledged because
exactly.
they were humans in life, they're humans in death,
Mhm.
and we are in their space. And a lot of times they don't understand why until they do, because they do when you explain it to them.
Exactly.
So
Unfortunately,
yeah.
like, my mom did say, like, we didn't go back after that because my mom kept us inside, but that didn't stop her from, like, seeing various entities, and just, like, it's hard to not experience it there when there is a lot of history and trauma just tied to everything.
Oh, sure. And somebody who's sensitive, as she obviously is, it's really hard to turn it off. You have to train yourself
Mhm.
to do that. What happened with your mom's brother?
Oh, he just kind of ignores everything these
No,
days.
the one that passed away.
Oh, I he passed away because, they went to the river. There was a river nearby. It had a lot of rocks. Everyone was aware of the currents. He's a very strong swimmer. Um, and that day he got stuck. His ankle got stuck in between two rocks, and
Hmm.
he ended up drowning. And the night before, he was like, um, the only thing that sucks about heaven, mom, is that I won't be able to have your fried chicken again. Which seemed a little silly. Like, when my mom told me this, I had to, like, kind of restrain myself from laughing a bit because that's kind of a weird thing to say.
Sure.
Um,
Do you
I
think it was definitively like a prediction that he knew
Yeah,
he wasn't going to live very old?
yeah, and it just it destroyed my mom because she and
Mm.
her older brother were very close. That's actually how my parents met, was at his funeral. My dad was playing for the band at the funeral.
Interesting. Your dad had his own experiences with spirit too, right?
He did, yeah. He does not like talking about it too much, which is fair. He feels like if he acknowledges it, then more is gonna happen. But when he was very young, there was a really bad storm, and there was actually lightning, which wasn't too common from what I understand, on the island. And he and his sister were just kind of playing, and then this ball of light just, like, came in, and I was like, "Oh, it was probably ball lightning, Dad. Like, it's rare, but it happens." He's like, "No, that's not how this thing interacted. Like, we actually could touch it, and it played with
It's
us."
intelligent,
Mhm.
intelligent. Was that the one and only time you ever saw that?
That was the only time he ever saw that.
So you said, just offer it a cup of coffee. Now, this has become your motto. So please explain.
Um, my mother has always said, if you ever have a spirit or entity that, is bothering you too much, just give it coffee. Just offer a cup of coffee. Say, "Hey, I'm here. You're here. Let's have some coffee." You
Yep,
don't.
that's acknowledgement.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I say that all the time. Even if you're going into their space to say, "Hey, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting. I just need to grab some things," or if you're redecorating, because that's usually a trigger too.
Yeah. Like,
Make them a part of it. I hope you like what I'm doing. I'm trying to beautify the place again. Keep it up, or all of those things always help. Always.
yeah.
At one point, you lived in your mom's boyfriend's house, and you said spirits were often felt passing through. That was the way you put it. Did you mean to say that you felt this was indicative of a portal of some sort?
Thinking back on it now, through the years, it likely was, but back then it was more just confusing because
Well, you
we
learn
would.
things as you got older and you understand it more than you did when you were a kid. Same with
Right,
me.
right.
Yeah.
Because there was like a few um entities there that were always there. Um, but most of the time it was something new or someone new passing by, and it just felt kind of like, when am I allowed to be comfortable in my own home? um, because with new beings passing by, then it was like, I don't know how to expect to interact with you,
Mm.
because some entities are nice, some are not so nice, and it got a little rough at some points.
Oh, I believe it. There was an incident that occurred with your friend Cerise in her home. Want to explain that?
Yeah, I was around 12 years old, so it's around 18 years ago. Goodness. We were in the computer room, and we were just on like Gaia Online and SFogs, which is a now defunct website dedicated to like pictures of ghosts and such. Um, everyone was downstairs. So siblings were downstairs, we were downstairs, no one was upstairs. And we heard a loud thump come from the room above us. And we kind of looked at each other like, that's weird. So we like kind of grabbed a few things to like arm
Protect
ourselves.
yourselves.
Yes, protect ourselves with
Yeah,
bagels,
right.
a bag of bagels, because that'll really do
That'll
something,
really
right?
keep you safe.
Yeah. So we go up to her room and we see that her oak dresser has moved 2 feet, and it is a solid oak dresser. It requires two people on either side to like
Mm,
move it
move
even
it.
a little bit. So we just kind of looked at each other like, what? And then I just saw movement in the corner of my eye, and I looked under her bed, and there was just like a girl there, like tucked under there. And I was like, yo, like, hey. And Cerise turned, saw the girl, throws the bagels, and we just bolt out the door.
Was she real or was you're freezing up? Can you hear me?
I'm back. I can hear now. What?
Sorry. Okay. I said, was she a full-bodied apparition? Could you see through her? Did you think
She
maybe she
was
was an elemental?
she was transparent. She was transparent. Um I could not see, like, the rest of her body just, like, at the angle that we were at, but it definitely looked like someone was just kind of, like, peeking up from under the bed.
He was trying to get your attention. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, which kind of, like, realizing upon, like, "Oh, wait, we kinda wanted those bagels for snacks," and having to go upstairs
You gotta go
again.
back up.
Yeah. No one there this
And
time.
no one there that time.
No one there.
Oh,
Um,
that's so funny. Got a rise out of you. Definitely got a rise out of Cerise, that's for sure.
yeah.
So a fire forced Cerise and her family to move into a rental home. And then you said these sightings continued in her rental home.
Yeah, it was the strangest thing because I think we all felt like, "Oh, it's a new house, you know,
Nothing's
nobody
gonna happen.
nothing's gonna happen."
Mhm.
Everyone felt very uncomfortable in the basement, which is a very common theme, apparently. And it always felt like as soon as you turned the lights off at the bottom of the stairs, you had to run up because someone was going to grab your ankles. That was just like the feeling we all got. We never actually told each other about this until later, but it was weird and uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, I still remember getting, like, the frantic phone call in the morning on a Saturday. Uh, I was watching Ghost Adventures with no, it wasn't Ghost Adventures, it was Ghost Hunters. This was before Ghost Adventures was even on the air. Ghost Hunters with, my mom's boyfriend, and I got a frantic call from Cerise saying, "Hey, you know that song we both really like that is from a video game?" And I was like, "Yeah, I hear it playing in the background." She's like, "Yeah, my computer doesn't have speakers. These were the ones that externally plugged in. You didn't have speakers otherwise."
You
Um,
didn't know where the sound was coming from. Well,
yeah,
whatever it was, like when you guys played the game and wanted you to play it some more.
it was like I physically went there and it was so loud.
And
It
it was
was
still there and still going
it,
on when you got
it was
there?
still going 10 minutes later. Yeah. And
Wow.
I walked up the stairs to where the computer was kind of tucked away where her brother was at, and I was like, "Dude, like, this isn't a very funny prank." He's like, "It's not a prank. I'm the" and he pulled the speaker, like, plug, showed me. He's like, "This was on the floor because I had seen him lift it up like that." And then he pulled the speakers away entirely and let them dangle, and the music was not coming from the speakers. It was, like, physically coming out of the wires in the back. They were vibrating
Wow.
so hard.
Too bad you didn't have, like, your cell phone at the time to
No,
kinda
this was
go in
before
or
it was
record.
common to have cell
Mm.
phones, and
Good to have
I
them nowadays, right? Because you can get some
right.
great patches in these home cameras. I'm amazed about
Yeah.
how the rings are catching so much stuff, that people don't even realize until they check it after or something triggers, and they're like, "What the heck?" And then they
Mhm.
review footage, and they're like, "Oh my god, what the heck is that?"
Yeah,
So
and it is one of, like, my greatest, like, almost regrets to not have this happen in a more modern day because
yeah,
that absolutely would have been picked up by a camera if,
sure.
um, the it's so hard thinking about that place because it was spooky.
Mm,
Um, one time the doorbell rang and we were just kind of like I was upstairs with Cerise's brother and we walked down the stairs. Cerise was downstairs getting I think a snack for one of the other siblings and we just both got a really bad feeling and we're like, "Don't open the door." And Cerise was like, "Why?" We were like, "Don't open the door. Just don't." And
she
she
did.
she did. Of course she did. Like we didn't know what was out there. Neither did she. So obviously open the door. Like, she did at least peep through the peephole, but there
And
was no one
sure,
there.
nothing. Mhm.
And so that's when she opened the door, and she saw nothing. me and her brother both saw just like a very tall, kind of lanky entity,
Haggard.
haggard, and the fabric was really rough and torn up. And we were like, close the damn door. And I looked at him and I'm like, did you just see what I saw? Like, and he's like, gray fabric, tall. Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool, cool.
She didn't see it, huh?
She did not.
Wow. That's crazy because she saw the girl under the bed, so it's
Hmm.
that she wouldn't see, unless that fact that she didn't see it was meant to entice her to open a door. I don't know. It's just speculation, but that is so strange.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable. I did not feel comfortable being over there if I could avoid it at this point. Um, just not fun.
Is that what happened to you when you guys were decorating for Halloween? Was
It
that
was
the
that
same
same day.
incident that
That was the same
it's
day, yeah.
decorating for Halloween when the doorbell rang? Gosh, I would wonder who the heck he was. It's so strange. Well, you picked up an attachment that you referred to as Bob in Helen's house. Tell us about that story.
Um, my friend Helen had been like talking about how she had seen this guy every once in a while and he was coming often enough. And I'm not referring him to the entity by the name that he actually gave us because
Sure.
no. And Bob was kind of
You don't want
like,
anything to trigger a comeback. It's
yeah, I
understandable.
don't need him in my life right now. um she was talking about him and I'm like, "Oh, that's really weird because anytime I talked about like spooky things, she's like, I've never had anything like that happen to me." So now that she was talking about it, I was starting to get concerned because I was like, that's really weird. And I walked over to her house after school because it literally, the school was right here and just down the street was her house. So walked over, felt like I couldn't get into the house. There was just a strong feeling of no at the front door. And she was like, "Come on, like we gotta drink some water." We just walked. I was like, "Okay." I walked in and I sat down in the office next to the like they had a like 50-gallon tank of goldfish, and I just sat next to the tank because it felt so strong in there. I can't explain to you how oppressive it felt. That's
Oh, yeah.
and
That's a strong
she had a
word, oppressive.
yeah, well, yeah. I don't like using that word unless like I have
No,
to,
but yeah. Yeah.
but that's the best word I have for it. And I looked over at her cuz she was filling up a water glass at the fridge, and she kind of turned at me and then she looked down and she goes, "Hi, Bob." Because there was according to her, she saw a hand like pushed through her stomach. And then I could not look at her or in that direction. It was just so uncomfortable. And I was like, "Yep, you sure got something." I didn't know how to like explain to her like whatever this was not a great thing to have. Um and she looked at me and she goes, "Bob doesn't really like you very much." And I'm like,
Oh, great. Jeez.
"Yeah." And
Nice.
I'm like,
Thanks.
"Yeah, I would imagine not, considering like I can feel that presence so strongly." And eventually like I could feel like it kind of moved away from both of us, and I was like, "Okay, cool. I can breathe now." I love that for me. Um and I looked up at her cuz she gave me a glass of water and I was drinking it, And the way that the kind of foyer was settled, like the office was just in a room off to the side of the foyer, but you could still see like the staircase and there's a landing before the stairs continue. And I looked up and I just saw this dude there. And I was like, "Is that Bob? Black hair, kind of pasty." She's like, "Yeah, yeah, that's Bob." And I'm like, "Uh-huh, cool. I'm we'll do our homework and then I'm gonna go home." I just did not feel safe to stay over like I had planned. I eventually like walked home and my mom opened the door because I locked myself out. I had forgotten my keys. And she looked at me and she's like, "You two can
What
come
are you
in."
doing here?
Yeah. And then like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Hello, I live here." And mom's like, "No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to whatever's with you." I'm like, I'm pretty sure that like I'm good." And mom's like, "No, you're not. What's its name?"
Oh, your whole family is so sensitive. Sheesh. Okay, so she realizes that Bob is with you,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. We have to try and get into the habit of saying before we leave these places, "You're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to come with me."
Yeah.
And sometimes we get so accustomed to going and doing these things that we forget to say, "Don't You're not allowed to follow me home." So
Well,
it doesn't sound
yeah.
like he was typically an actual attachment. It just feels like he wanted to come home with you.
Well, he stuck around a lot longer than even then. Um, I long story, I got kicked out of my mom's house, not by reason of me doing anything wrong, just so I went to go live with my dad. And um, Bob was there too. I no longer had contact with Helen at this point, and I was taking a shower and very classic horror movie, pulled open the curtain to kind of
Yeah.
like come out and he was right there and I'm like, "The hell are you, Bob? What? Hi, go away." I did not expect to see him there. And he was like, "Well, I'm here now." And I was like, "No, no, no, you're not. Get out. You're not welcome here." I tried very hard to just I tried the path of like ignoring. So I'm like, okay, I've already talked to him, told him to leave. I don't want anything to deal with him. And he just stuck around for about a year until I was finally like comfortable being like out ski. Like I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night because you are standing there and like poking me consistently. I am tired. I'm trying to deal with high school. I've got other stuff going on. Get out.
Did you say that at one point you had to have a shaman help you with something?
Oh, Lord. Huh?
I don't know. For some reason I thought I remembered you saying something about you having shaman come, unless I'm getting it confused with something else. But you did say something happened when you and your dad were watching Doctor Who.
No shamans on my end, but
So-
yeah. The um Doctor Who was like the one thing me and my dad had like really in common other than like baseball. And so we would kind of sit and have dinner and just kind of like relax there. And I heard whispering, and so did he. And he just kind of, when someone's like whispering in your ear from behind you and you kind of like turn like this and you're listening. He
Mhm.
doesn't remember what she said, but I remember watching his shirt pull back like that and just snap forward again, like just a really quick release.
Mhm.
And I looked at him and he's like, "Did that just happen?" I was like, "Yeah, it happened." Um that trailer, because it after we moved to the US, we didn't have a lot of money, and so on and so forth. So we had lived in a trailer park, manufactured homes for a long time. My dad was living in at the time after my mom had moved out. We knew that a woman had died there, and she was the previous owner had passed away. Um, because the next door neighbor was her best friend. So we always knew that she was around. I didn't have anything to bother her. Like, it was like, okay, she's here. I'm good with that. She was comfortable. It felt like when I got home from school, it was like, okay, I've got grandma vibes coming. We're cool. She did not like my dad. She did
Mm.
not like my dad. And one night, I was asleep. I woke up because I heard footsteps. I thought it was my stepmom. But my stepmom had returned to Puerto Rico at this point, so she wasn't in our home. And then I was like thinking about it. I was like, that doesn't sound like my dad's footsteps either. They were heavier thuds than even his footsteps. And then I heard my dad's door slide open, and I hear him take a few steps out, then walk towards my door, open it, and he's like, "Are you asleep?" And I was awake, but I was like, "I'm not gonna I don't wanna talk about this right now, so I'm not gonna answer." And then he closed my door and went back to his room. The next morning, I was like, "Hey, were you out did you come to my room last night?" He's like, "Yeah, but I thought I heard you walking down the hallway, so that's why I came down." I was like, "I thought that was you." I mean, I thought it was, you know, your wife, but I just remembered like she had gone back to the island the other day, so she's not here. He's like, "Yeah, uh-huh, okay, we're not talking about this ever again." And I'm like, "What?"
He shuts it off.
He does. He
You
does.
said you predicted one of your mom's sister's death. I had predictions when I was a kid too, and they came to me in dreams. And I too predicted the deaths of my godparents. It frightened me so much that I actually shut it down, and then the predictions stopped coming. I don't know if I miss it or not, but tell us about that experience.
I it was like it was the week before Christmas in 2014, and my mom was kind of whinging about going back to Puerto Rico and like, I don't know if I want to go back. I don't know if I want to deal with my mom or my dad. And she talked about wanting to see her sister, and I'm like, well, you never know what's going to happen, mom. You never know like if someone's going to pass away. I don't know why I said that. I literally the words just blurted out, and my mom was like, "Don't ever talk about
What
someone
do you mean
dying."
by that? Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God.
And I felt really bad because like her brother passed away so at a young age, and I'm like, I should not have said that.
Mm.
I felt so bad. And um we ended up just kind of like ignoring it, and then Christmas came by. And then at 11 p.m., I was talking to my, at the time, girlfriend and on Skype. And I just got this feeling of like someone hugging me from behind. And I started crying, and we were on video, and I just looked so confused. And she was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I don't know." And a minute later, the call came, and I heard, like, my mom answer the phone, and I heard just, like, the scream of despair, and I was like, I looked at my girlfriend and was like, "I gotta go. I don't know what's going on. I gotta go."
Mm.
I come upstairs, my mom's sobbing, the phone's on the ground, and I could hear someone talking like, "Tata, are you there? Are you there? Can you hear me?" And I
Mhm.
and my mom ended up picking the phone and said, I gotta go. I can't." And just she screamed that her sister had passed.
Mm. Was it a tragedy or was it
It
sudden?
was uh it was sudden. She had a blood clot and it went to her heart.
Oh, those aneurysms, those are awful. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. I ended up having a clot and it almost killed me. And I was like, this is probably how Auntie felt. Not a great way
Yeah,
to feel, but
no, no. Well, since our first connection, you've said a lot of stuff has been happening to you.
oh yeah. It started out like kind of small, like just little things here and there. Um Mostly things moving around or um one night I was living with roommates at the time and they were gone. So I was like, okay, well, let me just, kind of leave my door open, kind of enjoy. And I fell asleep and I felt like someone got in bed with me. Like I had turned to the wall, my computer turned on by itself, which fine, whatever, like that happens sometimes. And then the screen lit up and there was a shadow on the wall of a very like masculine figure leaning over me. I had thought the cat had gotten into my bed because they have a Norwegian forest cat. So I was like, okay, it's probably just Yestola, it's fine. But then when the light hit everything and it lit up and I was like, nope. I was legitimately terrified. I don't It had been a long time since I had an experience at this point and just couldn't cope with it. Um I reached out to my mom and was like, this happened. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. Um my mom was like, well, you're not exactly ignorant to what is going on in the spaces that other people can't see or
Mhm.
hear. It wouldn't surprise me if someone was like, "Oh my gosh, there's someone who can see me and hear me." I was like, "How do I turn this off?
Mhm.
I need a break."
Have you done anything since then to try and learn about how to do that? Have you gone
Yeah,
through classes? Good.
yeah,
Good.
because it got to a point where I was starting to get overwhelmed and
Or it can control your life.
yeah, um there were like I went back to visit my mom's and my mom made a joke about um my basement friend because
Oh.
the basement was uncomfortable for literally everyone else and I felt comfortable because I was like I had lived down there for a while, so whatever was down there and me, we were like on good terms, and so I came in and it felt like a little bit I could feel the like slight grumpiness to my having because I came downstairs with my mom of my mom being in there kind of like invading, but then whatever was there realized I was also there and there was like this kind of joy. Like this person is back and I care about this person.
Recognition and yeah, that's nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've interviewed so many people over the years, and I've had occasion to speak to somebody who's lived with their spirits for 30, 40 years
Oh my
and
gosh.
love their spirits. And feel the loss of the spirits when they move out of that residence. Like if they were retiring and they sold their home, and not only were they upset that they were leaving, but the spirit was upset they were leaving. So you do hear that emotional connection for some people with their spirits.
I could definitely understand that. I feel that with whatever is down in the basement there, just because it whatever it is took the time to like protect me during like really really rough and difficult moments, and made sure that like I did sleep during the rough times, because I never wanted to be bothered during like personal tragedies or anything like that. I lost a friend, and um lost a friend to suicide, and it was hard because everyone
Mhm.
was he was so young, we were all so young, and I just wanted to be left alone because I couldn't face it at the time. I dreamed about him later, and I dreamed about him sitting on the bed and, like, tapping on my leg and just being like, "It's okay.
You know
You're
that's
gonna
a
be
spirit.
okay."
You know that's a spiritual visit from him, right? You know
Yeah,
that those special nuances we get from our deceased loved ones, those are them. That's them coming back and saying and nudging you and saying, "Hey, I'm here. Everything's good. I'm okay. I love you.
yeah,
I'm always with you." So just receive it and accept it and know that it was him.
it I needed that at the time. I was
Oh,
thankful
that.
because the last words I said to him were that I loved him. So I
Mhm.
never needed to worry about, like, regretting last words.
Right, right.
I felt very lucky in that, and I felt very lucky that I did dream about him on occasion, with him being like, "Hey, what's up?" Like, and it that was good. That was helpful.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm really surprised that that spirit in the basement never actually showed themselves to you, that you could actually see who they were.
Th
You know what I mean? Like, or that you weren't able to get a name or find out who they were, or sometimes
I had
they
nothing.
yeah, I mean, the spirit I had in my house when I was a kid, he only was on the main floor of the house. So it wasn't until I went down to the basement I never saw him again. But as a kid, I was frightened of him because I didn't understand at the time that he knew I could see him. And my mom, she
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, it's just a dream. It's just a dream." My mom wasn't like your mom. She didn't understand that. And it was just a dream. And I never understood it until later on. But I always got this Uncle Paul vibe. He was Uncle Paul. I don't know where it came from, but I had an Uncle Paul that died before I was born, so
Mhm.
it very well could have been him trying to say, "Hey, Ellie, I'm here." You
Yeah.
know, I don't know, but the house was pretty old house. It was from the 20s, so it could have been somebody else, and I he just had me call him Uncle Paul. But I just received it, accepted, called him Uncle Paul, and I was afraid of him. And if I could go back there now, I would say, "I'm
Yeah.
sorry," because I was running
Yeah.
from him when I should have been trying to listen to him, you know?
Yeah, but, you were a kid, and that's
Yeah.
that's the hard thing, is, like, if your parents aren't okay with stuff like that, or just like, "Oh, you're just dreaming," or it's imaginary friend, it's a little hard.
Absolutely. So what are you doing to help yourself with these gifts that you have? What is your plan ahead, and what are you doing to help yourself to understand and deal with it?
Currently, these days, I'm trying to be more accepting of the fact that I have these gifts instead of just kind of shoving it aside.
Blowing it off.
Mhm. Um, it's easier currently with where I live because I have never felt more welcome to be weird, quote unquote, in a place. My partner is very accepting and is like, okay, just like if something happens, let me know so I'm not like confused. Like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
it's nice to have people who are open-minded and want to talk about these things with you. And if
Mm-hmm.
something happens, I can be like, "Hey, so you weren't just like peeking over the counter, right? Okay, cool, cool." And not be immediately like, "Are you nuts?" Um, I find that journaling has helped immensely. Just kind of like, here's what happened today, here's how I felt about it, here's what I will do to kind of move forward from it.
Right.
Because I can't help everything that's around.
Sure.
And not everything
Yeah.
needs help. Sometimes they're just out there doing their own thing and they don't need to be helped, and it's like, "Hey, I acknowledge you. I see you. Please don't bother me."
And honestly, sometimes they don't even want to be bothered.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
I find that these random places like old asylums and hospitals and all that
No.
have these investigations open to the public, I wouldn't be surprised if the spirits just get really tired of it after a while.
Yeah, like, just let them rest. Like,
Yeah,
I wouldn't wanna be bothered 10 times a day.
yeah.
Like, just let it go.
Well, thank you so much for opening up today and sharing your history and how you've come to grips with it. And taking the bull by the horns, I guess, is the best way to describe it, because
Yeah.
it seems like you're more accepting and openly receptive to it now because you can shut it off and on at will, which is a huge, huge thing for people like yourself. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on.
Mhm. You'll have to update me if you have anything else um, interesting that happens.
There's been a few things recently, but I'm trying to figure out if it's tied together or not. So we'll have to see on that one.
Well, you'll have to let me know. And thank you to those who tuned in today. If you liked listening to this week's episode and you're into all things paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real podcast out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. If you missed any episode, you can watch and listen to it directly on my Eleanor Wagner YouTube channel. If any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find them on Amazon, but you can get signed copies directly through me at authoreleanorwagner@gmail.com. I write about the history of the town and location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it all off with photos and evidence. And I hope you'll stay a while and listen as Silent Crafters Stranger Part 2 takes us out of the show.